morning, everyone. And please, can we move to slide number 2, please? Good morning, everyone, and thank you all for being here today for another update on the wildfire and hurricane season. My name is Jean-François Dupéré. I'm the Director of Emergency Management Planning from the Government Operations Center at Public Safety Canada. I'm going to start with a few words about the Government Operations Center. Le mandat du Centre des opérations du gouvernement.
The interpreter regrets, but the sound is too poor.
Diriger et de soutenir la coordination de l'intervention en cas d'incident touchant l'intérêt national et de travailler en proche collaboration avec tous les partenaires en gestion d'urgence, que ce soit les ministères fédéraux, les provinces, les territoires, les organisations civiles ainsi que les partenaires internationaux. Le Centre d'opération du gouvernement maintient un suivi de l'activité des incendies de forêt à travers toute la saison au Canada et veille à ce que les hauts fonctionnaires et les partenaires soient bien informés quotidiennement grâce à une connaissance de la situation commune. We can move to slide number 3 now. In terms of the current wildfire situation, as of today, the Canadian Interagency Forest Fire Center, CIFC, is currently at National Preparedness Level 2 on a scale of 1 to 5. There are a total of 224 active wildfire with full response in the country, 36 of them being out of control, 55 being held, and 133 under control, which actually is a significant decrease in fire activity over the last couple of weeks, reflecting the wind down of the wildfire season. In terms of the 2024 wildfire season, the numbers are confirming the analysis that we presented this past March. Back then, we predicted that a lack of precipitation during the winter of 2023-24 and drought condition, along with higher than normal temperature, would contribute to an overall elevated wildfire risk in the spring and summer of 2024. Let's go to slide number 4. Here is what we saw so far during the wildfire season. To date, there were a total of 5,307 wildfires within the country, and we had 5.3 million hectares burned. As expected, the effects were mostly felt in the west of the country, where BC, Alberta, the Northwest Territory, and Saskatchewan had a combined 65% of all the fire in the country, with a combined 70% of the total area burned. Overall, during the wildfire season so far, there were 6 requests for federal assistance to support Manitoba, Alberta, and Newfoundland Labrador. This year, wildfire required the engagement and mobilization through the Canadian Interagency Forest Fire Center of 1,592 domestic firefighters between Canadian jurisdictions. In addition, there was 792 international firefighters that were mobilized from Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Mexico, the United States, and Costa Rica. Of note, all the international firefighters have now returned home. In addition, the Canadian Armed Forces assisted with 349 personnel that provided support for a total of 41 days over the season. Evacuation due to wildfire affected over 44,000 people, including 15,413 individuals from First Nations. For the Disaster Financial Assistance Arrangement, DFAA, we are currently tracking asks for assistance from Alberta, but we can expect additional jurisdictions to come in and ask for assistance. The federal government is looking at a federal share of approximately $1.101 million under the DFAA, and this is a preliminary number. Je vais maintenant céder la parole à mes collègues de Ressources naturelles Canada et de Environnement et Changement climatique Canada pour vous donner des aperçus plus scientifiques et détaillés de la situation.
So it seems that Mike Norton he has to reboot his computer. So maybe we can just go to the next, and then we'll come back to Mike after that.
Certainement, je peux faire ma partie tout de suite.
Oui.
Ouais. Ouais, je pense que ça va être la prochaine dans ce cas-ci.
I can do
Excellent, merci.
my part of the
Donc,
presentation
mon nom est
now.
Sébastien Chouinard, je suis
My name
directeur
is
exécutif
Sébastien
au sein du
Chouinard.
service météorologique chez
I work
Environnement et
for
Changement
Environment
climatique Canada.
Services at
Donc, le mois d'août a
ECCC.
été dans la continuité de ce qu'on a connu au cours des derniers mois,
August
soit des températures au-dessus des valeurs normales pour
saw higher than
pratiquement
normal
toutes les régions du pays.
temperatures.
Donc, au cours de la dernière
In most
décennie,
of the
un
country,
réchauffement a
like
été
the
observé
past
partout au Canada pour
decade, we have
la période
seen
estivale, puis
higher
ceci est
temperatures.
attribuable au changement climatique
This
d'origine
is
humaine.
because
Les écarts les
of
plus grands
climate
comparativement
change.
à la normale ont été enregistrés
We noticed higher temperatures in Northern Ontario and Manitoba.
in a number of heat waves. These heat waves are now being analyzed by ACCC climate research team using the rapid attribution system to assess the role of climate change in driving those changes. Next slide, please. Canada's precipitation regime between June and August shows a large deficit across the country, representing a continuation of the condition observed over the past 12 months and beyond. These conditions have increased the potential for forest fire, particularly on the prairies and in British Columbia, and were a key factor in the intensify of fires such as the one that ravaged part of the town of Jasper. Seul le sud de l'Ontario et du Québec ont observé des précipitations.
There was higher rain in southern Ontario and Quebec during the summer. And there were 2 tropical storms that led to that. This led to significant rain in the regions, and the impacts were significant for Canadians and on infrastructure as well.
In terms of the outlook for the months of October to December, the temperature forecasts show a warming trend continuing over all regions of the country, with high probability over the Arctic region and central and eastern Canada. Only British Columbia coast is large-scale phenomena such as La Nina. This type of atmospheric condition will bring cooler weather to the west of the country. And in terms of precipitation, the forecasts for October and subsequent months don't show any large-scale signal and any particular trend. So I guess at this point, it's here back to you, Jean-François or Mike, if he's
Merci, Sébastien. Je ne sais pas si
online.
on présente Ressources naturelles Canada sur la ligne. Dans ce cas-ci, on va passer à la prochaine diapositive.
Unfortunately, the interpreter regrets, but the sound is too poor for interpretation.
So let's move over to hurricane now. To put things into perspective, at the beginning of the season, a few weeks back, we were anticipating between 17 to 24 named storm in the Atlantic, when the average is normally 14. Out of these, we were expecting between 8 to 13 to become hurricane, when the average is normally 7. So it is fair to say that at the time we were expecting an above average season. Before turning back to my colleague from Environment and Climate Change Canada for an actual overview of the hurricane season so far, let me say a few words on hurricane preparedness activity. As per Wildfire, the Government Operations Center leads federal response coordination during emergency, ensuring that we maintain situation awareness, that we develop integrated risk assessment, and that we support effective response coordination. Nous collaborons également de façon étroite avec nos partenaires des infrastructures critiques, en particulier dans le domaine des télécommunications et du transport. This collaboration is key to enhancing planning, response, and recovery activities before, during, and after an event such as a hurricane. I want to say that all the Atlantic provinces are strengthening partnership with the federal government, NGO, telecom, and infrastructure partner for planning, response, and recovery. While we cannot control which storm may affect Canada, we can control how we respond to it and how we prepare to it, and we are ready to do so. I'll now turn back to my colleague from Environment and Climate Change Canada.
Oui, merci Jean-François. Donc jusqu'à maintenant, Il y a 8 systèmes tropicaux qui ont été nommés, ce qui veut dire qu'ils ont
The
atteint au
interpreter would like to
minimum le
repeat
stade de
again that the sound
tempête
is too poor for
tropicale.
interpretation.
Donc, dernièrement, les conditions atmosphériques ont limité la possibilité de développement des systèmes tropicaux, si bien qu'en date d'aujourd'hui, il y a eu moins de formation de systèmes tropicaux qu'en moyenne à ce temps-ci de l'année. Cependant, il y a une certaine activité qui est notée présentement sur les Caraïbes, sur l'Atlantique. We're currently monitoring Tropical Storm Helen, which has just formed in the Caribbean region and has the potential to intensify rapidly and reach hurricane status over the next few days. The latest forecasts indicate that this system could intensify further before making landfall in northern Florida. A northward track is expected once the system makes landfall. However, given the prevailing atmospheric conditions over central Canada, the expected impacts of this system on Canadian regions are expected to be marginal. The Canadian Hurricane Center is also monitoring an area over the Atlantic Ocean with the potential for the development of a new named system. However, given the actual atmospheric conditions, again, it is very unlikely that to see any activity in area of responsibility for next week in relation to that system. So although activity has been limited so far this season, it is important to remember that the season is still underway and that we are currently in the peak of the season. This period, when conditions are normally more favorable for the development of tropical system, extends until October 1st, while November 30th marks the end of the hurricane season. At this point, it is important to remain vigilant and prepare in the event of a tropical system impacting Canadian regions. J'inviterai maintenant mon collègue de Service aux Autochtones Canada à prendre la parole.
Merci beaucoup. Bonjour, je m'appelle James Moxon et je suis directeur général de la Direction générale des opérations sectorielles à Service aux Autochtones Canada. À Service aux Autochtones Canada, nous travaillons en collaboration avec les Premières Nations en prévision de la prévention des situations d'urgence, tout risque. The climate crisis is making catastrophic emergency events such as wildfires, extreme heat, and hurricanes more common across the country. These events affect First Nation communities and threaten their ability to hunt, fish, and carry out traditional lifestyle practices and ceremonies. First Nation communities and their members are disproportionately exposed to the effects of these events. We've seen a noticeable decrease at this point in emergency incidents overall. While this is certainly good news, ISC will remain vigilant and ready to work with First Nations to support their preparedness and response to emergency events moving forward. Service aux Autochtones Canada travaille en collaboration avec des partenaires des Premières Nations ainsi qu'avec des autres ministères gouvernementaux pour répondre aux situations d'urgence au fur et à mesure qu'elles surviennent. Les Premières Nations peuvent pour le pas accéder aux services d'aide d'urgence de Service aux Autochtones Canada pour rester en sécurité et à se préparer face à ce type de catastrophe naturelle. As of September 20th, there are no wildfires threatening a First Nation community in Canada. Should a fire resurface and pose a threat to its members, any First Nation community can seek support from ISC, as the department remains on standby along with other partners. In response to events, ISC works closely with First Nation partners, provincial and territorial governments, and third-party partners, including the Canadian Red Cross, to support a comprehensive and coordinated response to emergency events. Many First Nation communities, particularly in the Atlantic and Quebec region, may be affected by weather events such as hurricanes, windstorms, and flooding, as we are in the middle of hurricane season. As this season progresses, First Nation leadership and ISC officials continue to work side by side to identify necessary supports and to address any request. To date, ISC Atlantic and Quebec regional offices have engaged in regular and ongoing discussions with First Nation partners regarding preparedness for extreme weather events, including hurricanes. This also includes a hurricane forecast presentation by Environment and Climate Change Canada to First Nations. As the wildfire season slows and as partners continue to be exposed to other threats, including hurricanes and other extreme weather events, funding through the Emergency Management Assistance Program at ISC will continue to be available and to provide support. The Emergency Management Assistance Program is a single window for natural hazard emergency events in First Nation communities, which assists First Nations with the recovery work required to restore them to pre-disaster condition as rapidly as possible. In the 2024 wildfire season, ISC has provided $37.5 million to support response activities across the country. Specific additional investments for fiscal year 2024-25 include $10.9 million in funding for Fire Smart initiatives to enhance wildfire resilience and $18 million in non-structural mitigation and preparedness funding to enhance community-based resilience. In addition, funding is being provided to support over 260 individual, full or part-time emergency management coordinator positions in First Nation communities, tribal councils, and First Nation organizations. This support provides First Nations with valuable emergency preparedness and planning capacity. This support will also contribute to building resilience within First Nation communities in order to withstand and recover from the impacts of natural hazards such as wildfires and hurricanes. We continue to work alongside First Nations to support the health, safety, and well-being of their communities and to enhance their emergency management capacity throughout this wildfire season and after. Nous savons que les feux de forêt représentent un danger naturel qui peut poser des risques pour les communautés des Premières Nations. Les Premières Nations, dont les besoins pourront compter sur le soutien offert par le Service aux Autochtones Canada pendant et après cette saison des feux de forêt. Merci, thank you, and I'll turn it back over to, I believe, Mike Norton.
Oui, bonjour, je peux reprendre la portion de Ressources naturelles Canada puisque Mike semble avoir certains problèmes avec sa connexion. Donc, bonjour tout le monde, je m'appelle Yann Boulanger. Peut-être juste retourner à la diapo numéro 2, merci beaucoup. Donc, mon nom est Yann Boulanger, je suis chercheur en écologie forestière à Ressources naturelles Canada. Puis, je vous joins aujourd'hui à partir de la ville de Québec, à Québec. Donc, we're definitely approaching the end of the active burn season, but we are not quite there yet. So, as just mentioned before, there is still fire activity, mainly in British Columbia, Alberta, Northwest Territories, and Saskatchewan. Donc, l'activité des incendies diminue normalement à cette époque de l'année avec la réduction de la durée du jour et des périodes de combustion, de sorte que des températures supérieures à la normale n'indiquent pas nécessairement une probabilité accrue d'incendies étendus et intenses. In fact, fires currently burning at a junction between BC, Alberta, and the Northwest Territories, highlighted by the red circle on the map, could continue into the winter, as warm and dry conditions look likely to continue in the area for at least the next month. Next slide. So 2024 is currently on track to be the second highest area burn on record since 2003. So this graph shows us that several of the last 10 years exceeded the 25-year average for area burn. This is primarily due to more extreme fire conditions and longer fire seasons, driven largely by climate change. So many communities across the country, including a disproportionate number of indigenous communities, were impacted this year by wildfire. And of course, the 2024 season also included a devastating fire in Jasper, Alberta, a park and community with meaning and memories for Canadians across the country and visitors from around the world. Plusieurs incendies qui font actuellement rage pourraient se poursuivre peut-être même jusqu'à la fin de l'automne ou même au début de l'hiver. C'est pas inhabituel, ça peut se produire lorsque de gros incendies font rage dans des régions où les couches de sol organique sont profondes. Le feu peut se propager alors dans le sol et continuer de couver. Certains incendies pourraient même couver tout l'hiver sous la neige et reprendre la vigueur au printemps. C'est ce qu'on appelle des feux hibernants. Cela signifie que les statistiques quant aux superficies brûlées ne sont pas définitives. Il s'agit plutôt d'estimations préliminaires qui se préciseront à mesure que les provinces, les territoires et Ressources naturelles Canada collaborent pour fournir des données fiables quant au nombre d'incendies et aux superficies brûlées totales. Although the active burning season is winding down, we must continue to be vigilant against starting fires all year round. As fire seasons are starting earlier and ending later due to climate change, it's become increasingly evident that we need to shift away from viewing wildfires simply as seasonal events and move towards the concept of a continuous fire year. Using a fire year approach, we will move towards the transformation that is needed for the new normal as fire behavior and events become more extreme. While our forests need fires, we need to recognize that there are actions that can be taken both during the active burning period and throughout the year to prevent and mitigate fires. Donc, le programme Intellifeu et d'autres mesures de prévention et d'atténuation continueront à jouer un rôle essentiel dans l'amélioration de notre résilience collective. Parmi les autres mesures clés, citons le recours accru aux feux culturels, la planification communautaire, la modification des matériaux et des techniques de construction, ainsi que de nouvelles approches de la gestion de nos forêts. As I finish my remarks, we would like to acknowledge and thank the tireless efforts of all the Canadian and international firefighters this current season. We also recognize the sacrifice of 2 firefighters who lost their lives in the line of duty in Alberta and in the Northwest Territories. Je vais maintenant donner la parole pour la suite de la conférence à notre hôte. Je crois qu'on en est rendu là.
To a colleague.
Très bien, merci beaucoup. Je m'adresse aux journalistes qui sont en ligne. J'espère que vous avez tout en...
Address my comments to the journalists. It is time to move to questions and comments. If you are on Zoom and you have any questions, I would ask that you use the raise hand function in order to ask your questions.
Please use the raise hand function at this moment in order to ask a question to the panelists. I see no question at this time. Je vois aucune question, donc je crois que cela va mettre fin à la conférence de presse. Merci beaucoup à tous.
This concludes today's press conference.